welcome back to my reaction channel. Today I will be continuing The Gilded Age, now on season 2, episode 2, and this episode title is Some Kind of Trick. Not sure what that is pertaining to. Last episode we got caught up with our characters again as the season resumed. There's been some very significant development in the friendship. Would you call it a friendship between Mrs. Russell and Mrs. Astor relationship? Yeah, there's some sort of development there. They're not exactly friends, like not in the probably friends in the sense that they would be friends in that time, like pretty close. They move within, starting to move within the same circle. Mr. Russell briefly mentioned that Mrs. Russell gets invited everywhere, so she's pretty much in the thick of it. But there's still this endless power struggle between her and Mrs. Astor. There's the issue with the opera, and they don't have a box. And since between watching the last episode and this episode, I kept on thinking about it, like thinking and thinking, why are they making such a big deal about the opera? And why do you have to have your own separate box to be able to attend? And like, it's if you did have your own box, like, do you go to every single event? Every single performance? That seems like it would take up a lot of a person's time. But then I also realized, I don't know why it took me such a long time, probably because I'm slow. If you've seen my other reactions, you probably realized that by now. So I realized that they didn't have recorded music back then. So the opera was really where they could get music. It was pretty much the only place. So I suddenly understood how it could be such a big deal for some of the people in society. I mean, if I was alive during that time, I would make such a big deal out of it also. Like, for me to be able to listen to music, like I would fight tooth and nail for a box or a seat or whatever I need just to be in there. But I mean, do you have to be in a box? I don't know. I assume it's probably just a status thing. So yeah. But of course, Mrs. Russell has plenty of tricks up her sleeve. She was able to invite the most famous, probably most acclaimed opera singer to her house for a demonstration of what she would be performing at the Metropolitan once it opens. And so that was quite a slap in the face of Mrs. Astor, because the singer supposedly only sings at the academy. So yeah. And other storylines, Oscar was assaulted by someone that I think he thought he could have, I don't know, a one night stand with or something. Took advantage of him, stole from him and beat him up and made him want to push forward more with Gladys. So he's made a proposal to her, sort of a proposal, yeah, that she would have all of her freedom and everything, run her own household, that they would get along. I mean, I could see that sort of working. Like I mentioned in the previous episode, they would sort of be using each other. And I don't know how I feel about it. I like both of them individually. I don't know how much I would like them together, because ideally I would rather that they married for love. I know that's tricky on Oscar's part, but yeah, I'm curious to see where it will go, because he said that he would write to Mr. Russell and Mr. Russell, I don't think he's that keen towards Oscar, but you never know. He could surprise us. Larry is a practicing architect now. Marianne got into a bit of a quarrel with Agnes because she's been secretly teaching at a girls' school watercolors, and that brings shame to their family because they are not supposed to have a working girl in their family. And so, yeah, I don't know how they're going to patch things up. Certainly hope they do. And yeah, I can't think of much else. So, well, let's see what this episode is about and see what the consequences of Mrs. Russell's risky show from, like, what will be the reaction from Mrs. Astor. She's gonna double down against a metropolitan or what. So yeah, let's go and watch the episode.
I am her mother and I make the decision. Are you going to reason with her?
I'm going to try.
It's like there's something between her and her mother again.
Your mother says you don't want to go to Newport.
There's something I need to have settled before I can leave New York. Day after day goes by.
Does it have anything to do with Oscar Van Ryn?
Why do you say that?
He has written to me, asking for an interview.
That's what I told him to do.
And I wanted to be quite sure what my answer should be.
Have you sent a reply now?
So
No.
he's taking
I'll write today
her
and ask him to
opinion into
come to my office.
consideration.
Have you told Mother?
Not yet, but I will. Of course, what I say to her or to him will depend on what you want me to say.
He gave me the reasons why I should accept his offer.
That was clever of him.
He asked me if I wanted to get away from Mother, and of course I do.
Oh, dear. Marriage is not the place to look for freedom. May I ask if you love him?
There is that, but these days so many people marry without love.
Which I assume means you do not.
He comes from a good family, and there is some money, and I'd be in society, which is what Mother wants. He can be very amusing. He does make me laugh.
That is a useful quality, I grant you. But it is not enough to base a marriage on. May I make you an offer? What if I were to promise to support your choice whenever you come and tell me you have fallen in love?
Even if Mother is against it?
Even then, I give you my word.
What a waste of Archie
What will you do
Baldwin.
with Mr. Van Ryn?
Let him down gently. So, will you go with your mother to Newport?
If you really think we're not making a mistake.
Of one thing I am sure. You can do better than Mr. Oscar Van Ryn.
Whenever they say that, I feel kind of bad for Oscar, even though I know it must be true.
Well, there you are, John. What happened?
My alarm didn't go off? Again?
Why are alarm clocks so unreliable?
You're right, they never work. I'm lucky I'm a light sleeper. Shouldn't we have some breakfast first?
How did people
No,
get
I'm
on
ready,
without
Mr.
an
Master.
alarm without
Can you
alarm
give this
clocks
to Miss
before?
Marian?
What is that?
Mrs. Bauer has made some luncheon for Miss Marian to take to school.
Leave it there. Do you really take a packed lunch?
It makes things simpler if I do.
Why has Mrs. Bauer never told me? Is everyone part of this conspiracy?
I'm doing a perfectly decent job. You won't need to be ashamed of me.
I'm ashamed of you now.
Ouch.
I ought to get started if lateness is not to be added to my other transgressions. I ruined it. I give up. No. You mustn't be afraid to fail or you'll never succeed.
So I should have another go?
Absolutely. Try again next week. Now, may I remind you that while it's important to copy the bowl of fruit, what I'm looking for is your own vision of the fruit, your own feelings.
I knew she was so artistic.
Now, be sure before you go to write your names on your pictures and leave them to dry. I'll collect them.
I'm so happy she has something for herself.
Miss Brooke, may we give you a ride?
Oh, I'd be taking you out of your way.
Nonsense. It would be our pleasure to see you home. Besides, we ought to pay our neglected call on Aunt Agnes.
Should be pleased to see you.
Will you protect us?
That won't be necessary.
Oh, you're the only person in New York who stands up to her. She must find it a novel sensation.
I will not revel in your disappointment, Oscar.
Thank you for seeing me. I was rather nervous when it took so long for you to answer.
You were right to be nervous.
I'm
Did it not
nervous.
occur to you to speak to me before you addressed my daughter?
I suppose I was carried away.
Gladys will not agree to be your wife.
He said he would let him down gently. It just doesn't sound very gentle.
Am I to have no chance to put my case? I brought papers proving my financial status.
But nothing will alter my conclusion.
You know that I'm very much in love with her.
Well, that is what I do not quite know. But you are right to claim it, since a love match is the one thing I am determined on for her. You have not convinced her, and you will not convince me. I think you may genuinely like her, and that you intended her to be happy in her life with you.
More than
Let me finish. I understand these marriages of convenience take place in every fashionable church in this city, but I want more than that for my child.
Of course you do, and I can
Let
only
us leave it there, Mr. Van Ryn. And now you should go.
That wasn't very gentle.
We were so very sad when Marian told us your news.
Thank you.
Our prayers are with you, but if there's anything else we can do.
If you mean it, I'd really like to be busy again.
Well, I'd be more than happy to welcome you back here if that would help.
Hooray!
I've tried a few others, but no one measured up to you, Miss Scott. Leave Armstrong to me. I shall explain to her the way things are going to be.
Yay.
This is good of you all to waste your time on me.
Oh, no, Mrs. Blaine. You're the kind one to give young Master Russell here a chance. May I introduce him and his mother, Mrs. George Russell.
Mr. McAllister is right. You're very generous.
I think we should start from
Very
here,
so handsome.
in the morning room. My husband liked small rooms. He said it was the only way to keep warm without breaking the bank.
You don't reek of hospitality.
Nor did he.
It's cozy though. I like the room.
Another rabbit hutch. The chimney piece looks as if his grandmother chose it.
She did, almost. It came from his aunt. She liked decorations and he liked saving money. So when she died, he used it in here.
How depressing. The thing these rooms need is light. More light and more space. That's what we have to figure out. But it will be a great place for parties when we're done.
It's settled. Larry, may I call you Larry, is going to undertake the work.
That
What?
quickly?
Surely you need more time to make a decision.
I always operate on instinct, Mrs. Russell, and my instinct tells me to hire Larry. When could you start?
Straight away. Oh, one thing. I'm going to the Newport lawn tennis tournament on the 12th, so I'll have to take the day off.
Can't remember when I was last at the casino.
Well, you're welcome to come with me.
I've had an idea which could be
Mary seems to
useful for
like
you
her.
in the opera wall. Now, have you heard of Joshua Winterton? He has old money and one of the first cottages to be built here. Anyway, he's been a widower for years and now has astonished the town by getting married after a short engagement. I'm told his wife is young and likes to play, so she may find the Academy crowd a little stuffy. And there's no reason why they couldn't take a box at the Metropolitan as well.
And he has money, you say?
Oh, lots and lots and lots of it. I'll introduce you when I give my ball at the casino. Oh, and
Another
no
ball.
tiaras, by the way.
What do we have here, John?
My broken alarm clock?
Are you attempting to repair it?
Not exactly. I'd like to understand how it functions and why it failed.
So, when did your family come over?
My grandfather got to Boston in 1794. He saw Europe going up in flames after the French Revolution and wanted to avoid the carnage.
We cannot criticize him for that.
My father died when I was quite young, so my mother got her way.
And what of your own wife? Should she be with us today?
I'm not married.
I've always thought it a blessing for our church over the Catholics that our clergy can marry and share the burden of their ministry.
I agree. I suppose I just haven't been lucky.
Is your mother still living?
No.
Thank you.
Mr. Oscar Van Ryn.
Oscar?
You remember the Reverend Mr. Forte from St. Thomas?
Of course. I must take my leave. I have evensong at 6.
Oh, we must attend one day.
I hope you will.
Let us see you out.
Did they even eat the cakes?
Are you all right?
My bid for Gladys Russell has failed.
I see. So will that be the end of it?
The absolute end.
I'm glad we were able to meet Mr. Forte again. We ought to entertain more. It's so much fun.
I agree. And I liked your rector.
Oh, he is not my rector, but I'm glad you like him.
I would have enjoyed it more if I could have got a word in edgewise.
Go on, Agnes.
I mean it. What came over you? Had you taken chatter pills?
He was so pleasant and interested.
Hardened criminals have answered fewer questions in the dock. I wonder you didn't ask to see his mother's death certificate.
I hope we can see more of him.
I doubt it. I suspect he'll be unavoidably detained if we try again.
I wouldn't be so sure of it.
2,000 workers walked off the job?
Yes. Of course, it was in Chicago, but the news will travel, and their action will embolden others, including your own workforce. Bill Henderson, that's right. He represents the Amalgamated Association of Iron and Steel Workers in Pittsburgh. At present, they don't have the power or the men to do what they did in Chicago.
Not yet. But you're right. This could be a harbinger for us. I have no intention of yielding. But doing nothing is no longer an option. Meet Henderson. Find out what he really wants. Money or a little power.
Suppose he's a man of principle.
It'll just make him more expensive.
Mr. McNeil?
Oh, yeah, we have this storyline also.
Can I help you, sir? I'm afraid Mr. Russell is out.
I have a message for the footman, Collier.
No one here is called Collier.
He was serving at the dinner Mrs. Russell gave for the new opera house. An older man, bald.
I think you must mean Mr. Watson, the master's valet.
Mr. Russell.
Come in.
I mustn't disturb you. I was just going to leave a message.
Mr. McNeil asked after Mr. Watson.
Come into the library.
He may be trying to poach him, sir.
Oh.
Mr.
That's
Watson
an idea.
is out, sir. I suppose he thought you wouldn't need him before you changed this evening.
Won't you explain what this is all about, then?
I can't because it's not my secret, but I assure you, Watson has done nothing wrong. I should be going.
Is he gonna, like, try to bribe him to not say that
Will that be everything? Thank you.
he's the father of his wife?
But before you go, I do have some news.
Oh, yes, madam.
Miss Scott will be returning.
Here?
No, to Timbuktu. Of course here. She will be living. I don't want any trouble.
I'm sure. I never started anything, ma'am. In fact, we never had a problem until Miss Scott moved in.
Because you created trouble for her?
Exactly.
As soon as she arrived.
I wanted to protect your good name.
Now I need your word. And if that is too much to ask, Bridget looks after Miss Ada and Miss Marian. She can see to me as well until I found a replacement.
You would replace me?
Well, if you cannot behave, you leave me no choice.
But what would I do? How would I live?
Oh, there's no need for this. I mean, you can get another job.
No. People like to train a maid when there are many years left in her. No one will want to bother with training me, not now.
Your fate is in your hands. If you show kindness to Miss Scott, then you may keep your position.
I feel bad for Armstrong's position, but really, she's like just making trouble for herself.
Peggy, I wasn't expecting you.
I have some news I wanted to share with you in person. I've been offered my old job back on 61st Street.
And you're taking it, I assume.
Of course.
I need a new start.
It's all my doing.
We've been through this, Father.
Facts.
I know you're sorry. You don't have to keep repeating it. You should get back to work.
All right. Do you need anything? Take this.
Father.
Take it.
He's turned on your leaf.
Remember how much your mother loves you.
I know. I'll come back to visit.
I will hold you to that.
Peggy's amazing.
This is from Lena Astor. Lena wants to come here and discuss her plans to save the Academy.
Really?
Yes, next week. Mr. McAllister will join us to devise a strategy to combat the Metropolitan.
Marian, could you join us in Newport on Friday? There's a tennis tournament at the casino, and I have someone for you to meet. You could stay for Mr. McAllister's party.
Oh, what an excellent idea. Of course, she'd be delighted. Tell us about this mysterious someone she is to meet.
Edward Morgan works at Charles Bank, although he's younger, of course. His parents have a place in Newport and a house on East 56th.
Is his mother Arabella Morgan?
Yes.
Then I know exactly who he is. She was born a Winthrop, and Marian would certainly like to meet him.
I'd like to see Newport, anyway.
Marian's
No,
wearing
I
a lot of
must dash. I'm
green
late
this
for a fitting.
season.
I just wondered if we could include Oscar. He's been rather down lately.
Because of that awful business.
He's a lot better now, but a few days in Newport would do him so much good.
I don't see why not. I'll send him a note when I get home.
I like Aurora's dress also.
And unifying the facade lightens the appearance.
Oh, yes. Now I see what you mean.
You don't mind disruption, then?
I gave 20 years to a man who couldn't bear to use a different spoon with his egg in the morning. I long for a bit of disruption.
I hope you like champagne.
I do. But shouldn't we wait until the job's done before we celebrate?
I like to celebrate a new beginning. And that's what I'm doing now. Beginning a new life in this house. A new life with new people.
Oh, it's nice to have you back, Miss Scott. It's nice to be back. Thank you.
You missed dinner. Shall I get you something?
No time. I'm behind on my sewing. Miss Ada added some things to my pile. She wants them mended to get to the church. I don't know how I'm going to finish it all.
I can sew.
You're the secretary. Why would you bother with that?
John, we show respect for all work.
She's offering you help, Miss Armstrong.
I can manage. Does that mean you don't want my help? I can sew. Fine.
He doesn't learn.
40-15.
I'm not sure how much sympathy I can have for you, Miss Armstrong.
Are you a tennis player, Mr. Morgan?
I used to be, but I've got rather bigger fish to fry these days. No party.
Oh, look, Mr. Russell.
Yes. Excuse us.
Good day, Mr. Russell.
May I present Oscar Van Ryn? This is Mrs. Blaine. Do you know Newport well?
I live here.
But how original. What are you doing in Newport?
Staying with my cousin, Mrs. Spain. What about you?
I'm working here.
I wondered why I hadn't seen you, but I'm glad if your career is really getting started.
Yeah, wish me luck.
Of course, I will, but I'm sure you don't need it. Who's this?
Mrs. Blaine, my current employer. May I present our neighbor in New York, Miss Marian Brooke?
How do you do?
Larry's been teaching me the rules of the game.
You couldn't have a better teacher.
Miss Brooke.
Oh, heavens.
Why don't you go and say hello to Gladys Russell? She's over there.
He's super
Are you here with
awkward.
your mother?
No, she had some letters she wanted to write. How do you manage your aunt so easily?
Aunt Agnes only approved this trip because Cousin Aurora is trying to match me with a man.
What's he like?
Dreadful, I'm afraid.
You should escape in that direction.
Or a different direction.
I hope you can be friends again.
He told you?
Yes, and before you ask, he'll be fine.
My father wants me to wait until I fall in love.
How heartening. I never thought of Mr. Russell as a romantic. My orders are simple. I'm to find a man with birth, position, and money.
Are you avoiding me, Miss Brooke?
What makes you say that?
Well, if you're not, come back with me now and we'll rejoin Mrs. Fane.
Where the heck did he come from? He's like so obviously different from like everyone else. Super awkward.
Who is that?
Poor Miss Brooke. I wish your friends wouldn't try to pair her off. She'd have plenty of suitors without their help.
Before Mr. Morgan returns with his drink, I believe we owe Marian an apology. Excuse me,
Charles liked him so much at the bank. That's my excuse.
He's a completely different person there. Or he seems to be.
It's often hard to tell who people really are.
I can manage. He's not the first man I've met who drinks too much.
So he's drunk.
Who's that for? They were running low on champagne, so I took 2.
Oh, Cousin Dashiell. How nice to see you.
Mr. Montgomery, Mr. Morgan.
Are you familiar with Newport?
How she says his
I used to
name.
be. Harriet and I took a house here every summer.
Dashiell, why don't you show Marian the rest of the casino? She's new to the town and she'd enjoy it.
Dashiell, we're still taking bets on who'll win. What do you say?
All right, $50 on... Which player shall I bet on?
I only know the name of one. Dick Sears. He's a friend of Larry Russell's, but $50?
Dick Sears.
Mr. Bannister.
Is he gonna taunt him again? Oh,
Listen, Nat, what about you?
don't lose
I
pumpkin.
promised myself a morning of paperwork, but things keep getting in the way.
Of course, you're a keen letter writer, as I remember.
I wonder if what? I just hope we might leave that incident in the past. I was very angry, and I behaved foolishly.
So it was him.
It almost cost me my job.
I apologize unreservedly.
It is, I agree, sometimes possible to forgive, but one cannot forget. And now, good day to you.
Dick Sears wins, thank God.
Why particularly?
Marian told me to bet on it.
I'd have felt awful if you'd lost.
Well, as it is, I shall use my prize money to take you for a treat.
There's no need.
You didn't give me any tips.
I'll give you a tip, Mr. Morgan. Go home and sleep it off.
What is this? What a flirt. Kind of weird.
I guess I should leave you here.
If you want to.
I'd rather stay.
That's good to hear.
I was kind of hoping that Larry would have a little bit of something for Marian, but like,
I should tell you that a friend of Mr. Russell's was here earlier asking for you.
I'm sorry?
Mr. McNeil. He said he'd a message for you, but he wouldn't say what.
What's the message?
He didn't leave one. He had your name wrong.
Why do you say that?
Well, he asked for a Mr. Collier, but then he seemed to think it was you he wanted.
It's very early for you to be up.
It's very late for you to get home.
What is it?
Scent, and probably French. No wonder you need a bath.
oh,
Where were
Larry,
you
what
all
did you do?
At Mrs. Blaine's house?
Was it a party or just the two of you?
Do you really want me to spell it out for you?
I want to know what you think you're doing with a woman twice your age and ill-suited for you in so many other respects I haven't got time to list them.
I like Mrs. Blaine.
Young men deal with these things without causing comment.
Yes, they go to prostitutes. Would you prefer me to do the same?
I prefer there to be no scandal.
Susan Blaine is a decent woman.
Decent women don't sleep with men young enough to be their son.
This one does!
Keep your voice down! Will you accompany her to the party tonight?
I'm perfectly content to take you and Gladys as long as you don't expect me to come home with you.
Whew, some attitude
How was
that
Pittsburgh?
Larry's
If I'm
giving off.
honest, things are worse than I thought.
What was Henderson like?
Why her? Why?
Clever, no doubt about that, and stubborn as a mule.
You mean he wouldn't be bought off?
I offered him promotion and money. I almost offered him wine, women, and song, but he won't shift.
I do have a lead on a story that could pan out, though I won't know until tomorrow. I'd hate to have you take the ferry all the way here for nothing.
It's no trouble at all. I'm living on 61st Street again.
For what reason?
I had to get away from Brooklyn.
My wife and I lost a baby boy a few years ago.
I'm so sorry. I guess you've had to learn that for yourself then.
Even under these circumstances, I'm happy to have you back, Miss Scott.
Church, you've arrived. Good. Has Adelheid brought the missing dress?
She has, madam. She's upstairs now unpacking it, and that's not all.
Surprise.
I thought you couldn't get away.
I couldn't. For the thought of you, all alone at McAllister's party. I hope you're pleased to see me.
Very. For several reasons.
Well, that sounds ominous.
Larry's in way over his head with the woman he's working for.
Mrs. Blaine, you surprise me. But I suppose boys will be boys. Won't it just play itself out?
Maybe. How long will I have my husband here with me?
This has to be a short visit, I'm afraid. Things are getting worse in Pittsburgh. Clay's been to see the head of the union, a man called Henderson. I want to arrange a meeting with him, a luncheon at our house. And I need your help.
I'll do anything for you. Surely you know that by now.
Spicy. This is a much spicier season.
Did you get anywhere with the clock?
I made a list of the tools that I need, and I'll get them too.
I hope it was broken,
It was.
because it won't work again once you get started on it.
We don't know that.
Bridget, I need that mending first thing in the morning. What's this?
I helped Bridget with the sewing.
I couldn't do it all.
Aren't you going to say thank you?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Come on, Miss Armstrong, just swallow your freaking pride.
I'm surprised you were allowed back into this house.
I have no quarrel with you, Miss Armstrong. I promise you do not want one with me.
You were right about Mr. McNeil. He's written, asking to meet me.
What is he gonna tell him? Come on, come on.
Mr. McNeil is my son-in-law. His wife is my daughter.
What? So you waited on your own child at dinner? I'm sorry to have asked that of you.
You weren't to know.
So how will you manage things? They can't entertain if it becomes public knowledge that her father is dressing Mr. Russell.
I imagine that's why Mr. McNeil wants to meet me.
Mr. McAllister probably throws one heck of a party.
I'm glad you were able to come. The war is heating up. This needs some thought.
Why? Are you afraid to be seen with the leader of the winning side?
To start with, you'll meet the Wintertons this evening.
Good. I'm going to tempt her with your plan and persuade her to take a box in both houses. What will Mrs. Astor say to that?
Well, no doubt we'll find out.
Here's my other cousin, Mr. Oscar Van Ryn. May I introduce you to Miss Maud Beaton?
But I wonder why our paths have never crossed till now.
Probably because I've been living in Europe, in Paris mostly.
How's that?
Well, Paris is wonderful apart from the Parisians.
She's pretty.
Miss Brooke. Hello again.
Hello. I love her
Are you
dress.
free of your unwanted
Oh
tutor
my
at the
gosh.
tennis court?
So beautiful.
me.
Larry. Hello.
I'll be fine.
Ah, it's you again.
It's nice to see you.
You remember Miss Brooke?
Of course. The next door neighbor.
What were you going to say?
Only that the Cowans are here, and I think they might have a job for you.
Then you must go.
Tell me about Miss Beaton.
It's complicated. Officially, her father was the late John Beaton, but I've heard it said that her real father is Jay Gould, and he takes an interest in her. I have no idea if it's true, of course, but she certainly seems to have a great deal of money at her disposal. She's a nice woman, whatever the truth about her. She goes everywhere.
What about her mother?
I'm told she was a Stuyvesant, but she's dead now. That was why Maud went to France, to get over it. I think she has a sort of paid companion in New York. You must only pursue her if your heart is really in it.
You know me. I am all heart.
Mr. Montgomery.
Sure
I
you
might
are,
find you here
Oscar.
if you hadn't gone back to New York.
I'm going home tomorrow. School starts again on Monday. Oh, how beautiful they look dancing.
May I ask you to dance with me?
Well,
Can I claim this dance, Miss Brooke?
oh, you're still in Newport, Mr. Morgan.
And I'd like to dance with you.
That would be so nice, but I've just accepted Mr. Montgomery.
There you are, Mr. and Mrs. Russell. May I present Mr. and Mrs. Winterton. Y'all should know each other. You have so much in common.
I'm sure. But for now, we must continue in Mr. McAllister's wake.
Your former lady's maid is now your neighbor in Newport?
Welcome to America. Father, you're very quiet.
What is that to say?
Nothing. Until we're alone and back at the house. And I'll decide what we say. If we say anything at all.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Whoa. Was that a twist? Never saw that coming. Never. Like, I thought that she might reappear again at some point, but to be this, like, lady or some new lady that has, like, married this filthy rich man and someone that she was planning to, like, convince to buy a box at the Met and to get on her side was oh my gosh, what I cannot wait to see what she has to say, if she says anything at all. So what a twist, what a twist. I wonder if it will come to light, like, to haunt Mr. Russell, that he tried to. He didn't do anything, but I don't know. Miss Turner is very conniving. She might say otherwise, so what's that? Okay, have to take a minute with Larry. Like, what is he thinking? Like, what is he thinking? I mean, yeah, sure, Mrs. Blaine, what's her name? Blaine. She's pretty and all, and she seems nice enough, but then actually, even like the first meeting, their vibe, she was overly flirtatious. Like, her eyes say something else, and whenever she sees Marianne, her eyes, like, changes. It's always like, oh, like, you know what I mean. You've seen her eyes. It's different when she sees Marianne. And so that was a failed setup for Marianne. Mr. Morgan, yeah, that drunken Morgan. She seems to be getting pretty close to Dashiell. So, and he seems, there's something in the way he gazes at her also. I think he might be a little bit infatuated. So I was hoping that Marianne and Larry might somehow end up as the end game, but we seem to be taking some detours before we get there, if we'll get there. So yeah, Oscar, of course, did not succeed with Gladys, and kind of relieved because I wouldn't want Gladys trapped in a loveless marriage. They'd be friends, of course, but it wouldn't be like romantic love. So, but he's got his eyes set on a new prize. So, good luck to Oscar. And yeah, I just can't get over Miss Turner and Miss Larry. Those are like crazy twists. And I'm also anxious to see where we're gonna go with Mr. Watson. Like, I want to know more about his backstory. So was he like a gentleman? Because his daughter had said that her father had like sunk pretty low or something along those lines. So maybe he was a gentleman before he became a valet. So I really want to know more. And Miss Armstrong is still being a bitch toward Peggy. I just really need her to get over herself because it's so annoying. I have a lot of sympathy for her because of her family life, but there's only so much sympathy a person can have and so much patience. And I think Peggy's starting to run out as well. So, yeah. Such a good episode. Oh, yeah. And all the outfits, still so good. Actually, might be a bit better. So, yeah. And, yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for watching. See you in the next episode.